Hi guys, we're back. Did you miss us?
Hi.
We are back, and no, we are no longer teenagers. We're actually 21 now, which is kind of crazy. But I mean, after spending 5 years documenting our teen years, we thought, well, might as well document our 20s, no?
You would think that after our teenage years, things would feel a little bit easier and not as confusing, but turns out our 20s are just as hard. So we just want to thank you so much for following along and growing up with us. It really does mean a lot.
So, anyways, we hope you enjoy the first episode of our new show, GrownKid. We've been working on it for a while now, and we're so excited to show you it. So, here's episode 1.
GrownKid is made possible by the Schultz Family Foundation, dedicated to helping young people unlock their full potential and successfully navigate to fulfilling careers. GrownKid is made in partnership with Joy Coalition, where purpose-driven content means powerful storytelling. From 13 Reasons Why to Unprisoned, Joy Coalition projects are made to bridge generations and drive groundbreaking conversations.
This episode is for the grown kids who hate doom scrolling but don't know how to stop, the ones who often get overwhelmed when they look at everything going on in the world, and those who simply want to know how to feel better about their own future.
To guide us along, we're also talking with some of our other Gen Z friends who you'll meet later on in the episode, and Dr. Meg Jay, who is a clinical psychologist who specializes in 20-somethings and young adult development. So let's get into the episode.
I used to have my screen time and on my homepage, and every time it went over like 3 hours, it was a terrible day. Like after the 3 hour mark, my skin feels musty. I feel like nothing is good in the world. Life is evil. The world is burning. It's like all bad.
No, it's the worst when it's like your room is really hot and you're just silently sweating.
Oh,
and
when
like,
the room is hot.
Yeah, but you can't move.
Like
You don't want to do anything because it's just too hot to do anything, but you want to be on your phone.
No, because the fan isn't doing anything. Like you have the fan on.
It's just there for noise.
You feel a little sweaty. Back feels a little sweaty. Like, ooh.
Your body a little sticky.
Yeah. No, doom scrolling is just, I got to figure out how to get out of it. For a minute, I tried setting time limits on my phone, and it kind of helped. But it helped when I had an accountability partner. And we would be like, oh, if we skip our time limit on this app, we got to tell each other. And then there's like a little punishment or something.
Oh, wow.
And it would help. And my screen time went down to like an hour, 2 hours a day.
That's crazy.
Crazy. Life was good.
I've never done that before, like had an accountability partner
really
for
good.
like screen time.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even set screen limits.
Oh.
Because I'm realistic with myself. Like, it's just a tap away to be like, oh, 10 more minutes.
Okay, because yes, after the accountability buddy, I like actually fully started to, because we were like, we did it for a couple months, and then I was like, wait, I think we're good now. I think I'm not addicted to social media. I think I'll be okay. Let's remove the limits. Like, we don't need this anymore. Fully went right back to it.
You relapsed.
Like, literally relapsed.
That's okay.
No, actually
That's
though.
part of the process.
First episode of GrownKid. I'm Gael.
And I'm Kayla.
And if you don't know us, we're just two 20-year-olds who, I mean, we left our teen years and realized that navigating your 20s is way harder than we fucking thought. Like, apparently having a career and a normal, healthy adult life feels kind of impossible for more reasons than one. Like, oh, what? Young people are sad and lonely? Like, yeah, no shit. We have no rent money. We got no career and no affordable mental health resources. So, yeah, how is anyone supposed to be mentally okay if they can't afford to live, you know?
I decided to go to college right after high school. Gal, you decided to not go, but you followed your passions and you started a company. But at the end of the day, we're both equally just as confused, as lost, and we don't know what it means to have a successful career or life.
Honestly, though, those frustrations are kind of what led us to create GrownKid. There's a lot of guidance for adults and teenagers, but then it's like, well, what about when you don't feel like a teenager, but you don't feel like an adult either? It's just weird. So throughout the next 12 episodes, we're going to talk to researchers and experts and people that are way more wise than us because they've been around longer and they've gone through this before. And hopefully they will give us actual advice and tips that we can apply to our lives in different situations that we've never gone through, like dealing with bad roommates, figuring out if it's conflict or abuse, or even just showing you, like, what does a successful career without a college degree look like, you know? Because I think a lot of times we get told this idea that the only way to have a good life is to go to college, but that's what's interesting about this, is that like, I'm not in school. Like Kayla said, I'm not in school. And I want to know, am I fucked? Or like, can I actually make a living? And honestly, I think I can. And part of our mission is to show other people, they can too. But yeah, anyways, that's the plan. Welcome to episode 1, guys. Episode 1 of GrownKid. I'm so excited. This first episode is really interesting because part of what I always feel like is a problem for me, at least, as we talk about what does it mean to be an adult, what does it mean to have a successful career and a life, is doing my best to not feel like a doomer. Okay, so doomer, or also known as doomerism, by definition, are terms that arose primarily on the internet to describe people who are extremely pessimistic or fatalistic about global problems such as overpopulation, AI, climate change, mental health, pollution, nuclear weapons, financial worries. It also says it's typically people in their 20s and male, which I think is so funny.
Oh, that's the demo?
Yeah.
You're the demo.
No, literally me. So apparently it's basically like, there's a variety, but typically it's kind of like this Gen Z, like young male in their 20s that just feels so pessimistic.
Oh.
And like just like doomed.
And you feel that?
Sometimes? I mean, yes. Okay, because there's that thing that I was telling you about earlier, that I do think there's a lot of times where it does feel like I am going to fail. Like I am going to fail at everything in life, and that like I don't have a career. I remember a couple months ago, last winter, I went through this really weird stage because I was in a limbo. Because when you're in college, you have a set pathway that you can follow. After the year ends, you could go to the next one, and you take your classes, you know what to do. But I wasn't in school. And I was in this point in my life where I felt confused about what that next step was. Like, where does my career go from here? There's so many ways that it can go. There's so many doors that are open, but I don't know what path I want to take. And it's especially difficult because, one, you're trying to figure out where you want to, you want to find your purpose. Mm-hmm. You want to find meaning in life. You want to have a successful career. But then you also realize everyone is just telling you like, oh, young people are now dealing with a youth mental health crisis. They're dealing with financial insecurity. AI is taking over. We're in a climate crisis. There's shitty job markets, the economy, political turmoil, like all of these things that are just so scary. And it's like, well, you find one thing that you're passionate about, but then it's like, oh, wait, your job might not exist in 10 years. And then you find another thing, it's like, oh, wait, yeah, you're not going to have a good job opportunity if you graduate in that. And so I think that's why, especially for me, I do get very like pessimistic at times and just nihilistic and like scared.
It's so funny you say that, because I feel like in general, and this isn't even about like global issues as a whole, though I'm sure it does play into it, but I think I hate saying this too because I feel like I'm like outing myself. But like I feel like just in general I'm more of a pessimistic person, because I think I'm positive like day to day, but then when I think of like long term, I'm like, oh God, this is all so overwhelming. I don't know realistically like where my life will be in like 10 years. Like, will I be a millionaire? I don't know. But I think recently I've been trying to be better at like reframing my mindsets, because I really do think that your subconscious thoughts sort of manifest itself. You may not realize it, but that's what you're subconsciously thinking. So like, I feel like it just comes out.
If you think you're going to fail, you're going to fail.
Exactly.
If you think the world is doomed, then...
Exactly. And I think like specifically too with all of the factors that you just mentioned, like political turmoil, climate crisis, financial instability, all of that. And I think because of the internet too, you just have so much access to like all of these different things that are going on in the world that it makes you feel like you need to be doing something to solve that. But like, I don't know realistically, like what can me, a singular person, do, you know?
Yeah.
And how you mentioned too about college and having that pathway, I don't feel necessarily that like security and stability of like, I'm getting a job after this, or this is gonna help me, or I know that it's gonna help me. But even in my day-to-day, I still feel that uncertainty of like, damn, I don't really know what I'm doing. Yes, I'm in college now, and I appreciate the routine because it gives me stability. But I don't know what I want to do post-grad.
Like, yes, it's unavoidable that there are things that you can't possibly know. There is going to always, no matter who you are, you're always going to feel those feelings of, I don't actually know what I'm doing. I think I find myself trying to find that North Star. Like, what is that purpose? What is that meaning? Because even the idea of getting a career for the sake of it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And that's what we're told all of our lives, is that you need to get a career. And the way you're going to get a career is by going to college and studying something. And it's almost like it doesn't really matter just what you study or what your passion is. Just do this and you'll be guaranteed. It doesn't really matter if you're happy or not. And personally, I never subscribed to that. I kind of, that's like the safe path, which I think is great for a lot of reasons, to have that safety, to have that backup plan. But I also think I have a problem with the idea of people getting told that college is the only way to have a successful life and a successful career, and that if you're in school, then that automatically means that you know what you're doing and you know where your life is heading, and that if you don't go to school, then you're seen as like this, oh, you're directionless, you are lost in life, you need help. And it's like, no, I mean, there's so many things and ways to build wealth, to have a stable career without that degree. There's mentorships, there's trade works, there's apprenticeships, there's a lot of freelance and contract work. I have spent, 18, 19, 20, 21, 4 years basically now being able to make a living just by following my passion. And there are times where I think, is this all going to come crashing down? And life is meaningless, and I'm scared. And I feel like, what am I going to be doing in 30 years and 40 years? But I also am constantly so scared everything is going to come crashing down. And I'm constantly scared that I'm not doing enough. And if I feel this way, then I can't even imagine how scary it must feel for someone that maybe doesn't have a proven track record or is still trying to get someone to believe in them. We should also not discourage people from following their passion because they think they can make a living if they do that. But why can't you do both? Why can't you both be an artist and have a skill that makes you money, like being a fucking plumber or a mechanic or some sort of trade, and do both?
I have mixed feelings about when people preach about, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't know how I feel about that saying, because yes, do what you love, and if you can make money off of that, even better. But another part of me is well, work is work. At the end of the day, you're putting in the energy and time, and I think what we're doing too, it's more creative energy and more mental. I don't know. I do agree that you can be an artist and you can also be doing a job that is just paying your bills. Because I think at the end of the day, for me, I crave financial stability, and I am hoping to get it by really any means. And so I think sometimes you just need to balance two things at once. I mean, Kyle, I think you've said before, for fun, you would want to be a baker.
Yeah.
You would want to work at a restaurant.
I do. I really do.
And I could see it happening for you. Yeah. Yeah. And
see, I want to have time for everything.
Yes. Oh my God, dude. I was literally thinking about this yesterday. I was I have so many hobbies that I just want to do. I would love to just take up little hobbies, do arts and crafts. No, girl.
Can't make a living like that.
I can't make a living like that. And, that doesn't pay the rent, doesn't pay the light bill, but that's okay.
I mean, it's also what lifestyle you want to have. It's if I choose to be a baker, there are people who are bakers for a living. Am I going to be a millionaire? Probably not. So again, it's also just up to you to decide, what do you want to be in the world? What change do you want to bring, if any? And realistically also, financially, what kind of life do you want to live? And some people really want to be rich, and they're willing to work and do whatever it takes to get there. But some are actually, as long as I'm working on what I like, then it doesn't matter if I'm a fucking millionaire or billionaire.
Yeah, it's for me, sure, would love to be a millionaire. Give me a billion, girl. Bring it in. But it's not even about millions or billions. I just want to reach a point where money is not a problem for me. And I think growing up with financial instability, I also saw a college degree as a way out of that, because that's what we were told. In elementary, you're preparing for middle school to high school, and then high school is college. And even from the beginning, it's the notion that these kids are going to college. They're not going to a vocational school or etc. And so I think when I graduated high school, I went to college mainly because I saw it as a way to get out of the circumstances that I was in. I saw it as a way out and a way to climb up the ladder, I guess you can say, which I know isn't the only way, but it just was instilled in me that like that this is the best way, I guess, that this can happen. And don't get me wrong too, I actually really enjoy education. I enjoy learning regardless of it all. I just liked being like surrounded with people that were also like striving and working towards something. And not to say that that can't be found elsewhere besides the college campus, because it can.
The system failed people in a lot of ways. Like, people are in a ton of debt that they can never pay off, and they maybe never will in their life, and they still aren't even financially stable, still living paycheck to paycheck. And I think that's why so many young people are starting to feel like this doomer feeling and like doomerism, because it feels like we were lied to. You know, it feels like we're betrayed. Like I was looking at a video on this, on doomerism, and it was so interesting reading the comments, because you got this sense that, like, even though the video was supposed to be sort of inspirational, like, oh, don't give in to doomerism, like, it's okay, you will get through it, everyone in the comments was so, like, nihilistic about it.
Oh, really?
So pessimistic. And it hurt to see, because you just could feel the pain and the frustration of so many young people that feel like they're cheated. The title was called, like, Why Gen Z is Giving Up. And people are commenting things like, this feeling of hopelessness and powerlessness is exactly why I refuse to read or watch any kind of news. Like, what's important to me in my life will reach me through my friends and family. The rest doesn't bother me. Like, the negative events that I can't influence just keep me in this spiraling mindset of everything is getting worse. I need something positive to keep my will to life. I may be ignorant, but at least I'm happy.
Yeah.
Damn.
Because I think a lot of people, like, they don't have the mental resources to deal with these overwhelming feelings of like, so much is happening in the world, what can I do? And so they resort to, I'm just gonna shut it out.
Because that's what does happen to me. Mm-hmm. And honestly, sometimes I'm like, is ignorance bliss? Would I be happier if I just stopped paying attention to world events? Because you read the news and everything is just like, it feels like everything is going to shit. Mm. It's just like I said, like, oh, mental health, loneliness, like political shit, like international affairs, like economy stuff. People are not getting jobs, like new grads are unemployed. It's scary, because it just feels too scary to take on. It feels like I can't do anything about it. Like, I'm just like, what change am I doing? Suddenly it feels like I'm not doing enough. If I'm not an activist, or if I'm not in rallies or protesting or in politics, then I'm not doing enough, and I should be doing more. But I don't know if it should be that way. I think that's not everyone's role, and I don't think, something that I want to talk about is that I don't think it necessarily involves you directly contributing to things like politics or activism or things like that if you feel like that's what you need to do to make a change in the world. I think sometimes it could start with really small actions, and that's part of why I want to do this episode. But before we get into that, I think we should get out of bed and actually go somewhere else.
Kind of hot in here.
Yeah, so let's stand up.
Let's do that.
Interested in a career in mental health? Check out the Youth Mental Health Corps, a new program created by the Schultz Family Foundation, Pinterest, and AmeriCorps, where anyone with a high school degree can gain experience, skills, and a credential during a year of paid service in the mental health field. You can learn more at youthmentalhealthcorps.org or by checking out the link in the description. There's something so nostalgic about hearing the ice cream truck in the back, because I don't know. It's so funny that everyone has that same jingle. I don't know if you guys could hear it, but if you can, like, yeah, it activates something in me, because
so nostalgic.
It's weird to think that I listened to that jingle when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and now I'm 21, a full-grown man, still listening to that jingle. Man. And just something stay consistent throughout your whole life, which is, it's comforting in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But also, like, damn, it just makes you think like how fast time passes. And I've especially felt it this year. Like, sure, I was 20 like last year, but now that I've spent a full year like in my 20s, I'm like, oh shit, like time goes quick.
What do you think was the difference between 20 to 21 that now you're like, oh my God?
I'm leaving home. I have things to do. I have responsibilities. And that's just been a little scary to deal with. Like, it's nice being outside in the sense of like, okay. And when I say outside, I mean seeing the world. Like seeing the world for everything that it is. And it's weird because when I am at home, it feels so safe. And I get that urge to like be at home and not take on the world and not do anything because it's safe and it's comforting and like it's all I've known. And now thinking about the fact that I'm 21, I might have to actually move out of home, my childhood home, next year and begin trying to find that elsewhere is so scary. A little like destabilizing.
Yeah. I think being born and raised in the same spot your entire life, I mean, obviously that becomes part of your identity. And so then when you have to move out, you kind of have to search who you are again outside of that, which is so scary because in a way you get to mold yourself now. Because before it's like, oh, you have your parents, you have that specific environment that is molding you. But now it's like, it's your free will, which is scary.
It's your free will.
Free will.
Damn, bro.
I know. I think something that I've felt has been a reoccurring thought and feeling, my career in my 20s and even past that, like where that's going to be. But also, a lot of times I feel like I can't live up to the expectations that I set for myself in all areas of my life, whether it's like family, friends, work, romantic relationships. I feel like I just spread myself so thin because I try to like satisfy everybody in all of those areas. And because of that, I just naturally, I can't give 100% to like everything and everybody. So I'm learning to say no more and set boundaries, not only with other people, but also myself, and learning to recognize that I don't have to feel guilty for taking care of my needs first, even though I just feel like I've been put in a lot of positions where I feel that I'm the caretaker and I feel like I need to take care of other people. And so because of that, I'm always thinking about what other people need or want and how I can satisfy that. And because of that, I neglect my own needs.
Yeah.
So,
see, I'm the same way, but I feel like I need to set boundaries with myself, which I think is the biggest thing about adulthood is that you don't have anyone really telling you what to do. It's like, no, it's kind of up to you, especially once you move out. It's like,
oh yeah,
baby, it's all you. You got to feed yourself. It's like, what do you mean I got to keep feeding myself every day? I got to keep making meals for myself, buying myself clothes, making sure I'm good and healthy. No one is doing that for you. That is when I'm like, oh, fuck, like I'm an adult. Like, for example, this summer we spent it in New York. And I feel like every time that I'm away from home, I start to realize, you know, if I'm spending the summer in New York, am I still maintaining my healthy habits of eating correctly? Am I feeding myself good food? Am I exercising? Am I keeping like a good mindset? Am I doing my work? These last couple of weeks, I think I struggled a lot with falling into the habit of listening to the bad voice. Inside you, there are two wolves, the good wolf and the bad wolf. No, but like, you know, the version of me, the inside voice that's just enhancing and really highlighting all my bad habits. Like, don't eat so you don't gain weight, or go on exercise more than you should because it's good for you even though you need rest, versus the good voice in me that knows the healthy habits that I need to have like a good life. And this summer in specific, I think I found myself falling into the trap of listening to the bad voice a lot. And I think I've really been like working on that more than anything of, no, I'm gonna like, I had to had an intervention with myself of, no, listen to the good voice. Stop, like, you know what you need to do to get the results you want, so do that, and stop listening to the voice that's just negating these bad thoughts that probably aren't even true about myself. But it's hard because it's like, one, if you don't have a support system, it's harder to do the good things. Two, when you feel like the world is bad, you don't want to be good and you want to be bad. And that's the main like theme of this episode too, you know, is like, how can we continue to take care of ourselves and our community when we're just so exhausted? Especially this year. It's an election year.
Yeah, tensions always run high.
Tensions are high. Dude, I've been spending so much time just like reading every political article recently, and it's definitely gotten a little exhausting just because you don't know where the future's gonna be. It's like you have this hope for like a better future in that way, but it still feels so daunting to believe that the possibility of us turning backwards is very real. And there's like an anxiety that comes with that. Because this didn't hit me last election season, or really like in 2016 when like it really all went to shit, because I was so young. I wasn't understanding like how politics affect my life.
Yeah. I actually was thinking about that. I think it was like yesterday or something. But I was reading up on, I don't know if, I'm pretty sure you heard of it, Project 2025.
Oh, yes.
And in my head, I was thinking, is this real?
Literally.
Is it like, is
It's
this
so
actually
extremist.
It's so
like,
extremist.
no, you can't do that,
No,
right?
exactly. It was like, is this just for like PR?
Like, you're fucking around.
Yeah.
Like, you don't mean that.
I was like, did somebody just create this infographic just to like
Fuck with
spread
people.
fear
Yeah.
or whatever? And
But it's very real.
it's very real, which is so much scarier to think that like, wow, my reproductive rights can fully be taken away. And that's such a scary thought that we've come so far and worked so hard and that can just be taken away so fast. And you would think that because it's 2024 that we would be getting more progressive, given more rights, more liberties, but it's going reverse and backwards, and it's really scary to think about, and
Yeah.
it's overwhelming even to think of that possibility actually coming true.
Yeah.
Because in that case, I'm like, well, what do I do in this? You know, like my reproductive rights are taken away. Where does that leave me?
There's an anxiety. I don't think we're the only ones feeling this way. And I think especially I think reproductive rights are such an insane issue right now that is just so overwhelming. And there's like the environment, and like young people feel like we're not doing enough to save the environment. And it's like, is being vegan enough? It feels like I'm sacrificing my own needs, etc., being vegan to help the planet. But it's like, is it making a difference? You know, and you have like mental health, you have gun violence, like there's just the political turmoil of it all. And I think that all of the issues that are going on in the world have really started to weigh on me. It was kind of like, oh, I know everyone's freaking out over this, but my life is the same. My life is fine.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, of course, we were young and maybe sheltered by school. But now that we realize, no, this really does affect us. And that's one of the scary parts about adulthood, is you start realizing like it's not all fun and games. Like these things have a very real effect on your life, and it could be so debilitating. And I think that's why this episode, we just want to focus on like, so what does it mean to take this on? Like, are young people actually, like Gen Z in specific, are we like just fucked? Or were millennials feeling the same way? Was Gen X feeling the same way? Were like boomers feeling the same way? Like maybe every generation has always had problems, and maybe ours just feel a little amplified because of social media and whatever. Because it's like when people ask you, what's the state of Gen Z, or like, what does Gen Z care about? I'm always like, girl, like, I don't know. Don't ask me.
Like, take a survey, take a poll. I don't know, girl, I can't tell you.
Yeah. So I think it'll be an interesting conversation. And like, what is the overall sentiment? Because on one side, you have people being like, wow, Gen Z is so strong and they're up for anything. On the other side, it's like, oh, everyone's depressed and you're lonely. So we talked with a bunch of our friends and kind of just asked them, in your opinion, what is the state of Gen Z?
My name is Bailey Bass. I am 21 years old. I have been an actress for most of my life, and I love it so dearly, but I'm grateful for the platform that it has given me, where I can talk about sustainability and our climate crisis. I can talk about women empowerment and equality and mental health, which is something that I have struggled with ever since I was 12 years old, and really using my platform to empower others. I'm first generation American on my mom's side. My grandparents both grew up in rural Belarus, where they literally made their own food, and then that's all they had to eat. And I think, one, it's in my veins to care about the planet because of my grandparents. Two, I think it just makes sense.
I'm Ziad Ahmed. I use he, him pronouns. I'm 25 years old, and I have a few gray hairs to show for it, but I feel a lot older than that, I think. But I'm 5'4", so I still look rather young, I think. Most people think I do anyway, they think, I hope, inshallah, God willing. I am the head of Nextgen at United Talent Agency, as UTA just acquired a company I founded when I was a teenager called Juve Consulting, which is a Gen Z marketing agency, a few months ago. But I continue to do the same work I've always done here at UTA, continuing to work with brands and clients and nonprofits and startups to help them connect and understand and empower with diverse young audiences. What I'm passionate about is more diverse young people having a seat at the table, and moreover, more diverse young people getting to build our own tables.
Hi, I'm Cameron. I am a Scorpio. I am 23 years old. I am a survivor of the shooting in Parkland, Florida, at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School that killed 17 people and maimed 17 others. Soon after, I founded an organization called March for Our Lives, which kind of kicked off the current media's understanding of Gen Z activism and got everybody talking about Gen Z standing up to make a change in a way that they hadn't really before, because we were still pretty young at the time.
My name is Deja Fox. I'm 24 years old. I'm a reproductive rights advocate, a digital strategist, a content creator, and I currently live in my home state, the battleground state of Arizona.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jose Caballero. I'm 20 years old. I'm a student researcher at Columbia University and also a mental health activist.
My name is Isaiah Hernandez. I'm definitely on the older side now, Gen Z. I'm 28. I am an environmentalist and creative under Queer Brown Vegan. And a lot of my work focuses on teaching people around the intersections of storytelling, media, and environmentalism. I have this very deep, passionate root for climate and environmental justice as someone who grew up in poverty in LA, and realizing how much of our relationship to how we see ourselves as environmentalists is very disconnected with like our pop culture today. Knowing the fact that environmentalists look so diverse today and don't look a certain way.
So all these older people always make us feel like Gen Z is this enigma, and I'm curious how everyone here feels about the state of Gen Z and what it even is right now.
The state of Gen Z right now is so different than it was 10 days ago, because very recently we were all looking at each other and saying, are we choosing between a crazy fascist and a withering corpse for president of the United States? After the activism that almost defined our generation in the media gave us so much promise of what young leaders can deliver this country. Gen Z has a very unique ability to make a tremendous amount of change. I'm not saying we've made more change than prior generations, but we have the tools to. Gen Z is such a large, tremendous amount of people. I'd be remiss to make a sweeping statement about my entire generation, because we're all so very different, and so many of us care about so many different things.
Look, I don't think Gen Z is a monolith, right? And I think that a lot of what folks get wrong when they talk about Gen Z is not being able to grasp that we can feel a lot of the same things as a generation, but manifest that feeling very differently. We can all feel overwhelmed, but what we do about that feeling looks very different. Overwhelmed. But we are not a homogenous cohort.
I think that there is a stark disconnect between the policies and the mental health interventions and the people that those things are aimed for. In this case, being young people. I was born and raised in Nicaragua. I think my perspective on the things that I do is pretty unique because of that background. To give you a little bit of context of Nicaragua, I grew up under a dictatorship, right? Dictatorships are completely different from democracies here in the US. And I grew up with a sense of hopelessness. There was a lot of things that went on into just living and enjoying a dictatorship like the one in Nicaragua. When I came to the US, I was surprised that I didn't have that sense of hopelessness anymore in the US. But I was surprised that people my age were feeling hopeless about the future and about different things that affected our mental health, whether it be or immigrant status or socioeconomic, geopolitical issues that were going on at the time. And the research says that young people are hopeless and that young people are feeling very sad and depressed. And to a degree, I think that that is true. But what I find surprising is that at least marginalized communities are the ones that are feeling hopeful and are the ones that are looking at things in the media and are looking at ways into improving their own hopes and improving their own lives in a way that makes them feel uplifted and makes them seem understood and seen. So I don't think there's just like one simple overarching label that defines this idea of hope. I think there are very interlocking systems that make it very complex and nuanced.
We have a lot of power. If we're just talking about the US, Gen Z, most of us can vote now, or a very, very large portion of us can vote now. And we lived in a very tumultuous time, especially during 2020. And it was so scary with the Black Lives Matter movement happening, with us really, really being concerned of like, okay, what is the state of our planet? They said that the world was going to burn decades ago and it didn't burn. So why should we care now? Like, they're saying all of this, science is saying all of this, but it didn't really matter years ago, decades ago. What does it matter now? But we are seeing the effects. I was just in Montana for a wedding, and they're like, we have forest fires all the time. And I was like, Montana? What? Like, no one, this isn't on the news. No one talks about it. We're always talking about California. And not only that, California's forest fires are affecting the air quality of Montana. That's it. Everything is connected. But we're not, there's so much hurt in the planet, in the people, in our world, that the news can't cover everything. And, they are picking and choosing, which can be really frustrating. But this is very, very global. There needs to be urgency, but I think honestly it needs to be led with kindness. We have to stop yelling at people, and we have to stop scaring people, because that's just going to make them stay at home, not come out and protest, not vote, and not have the conversations at their dinner table. Because how are you going to tell a 12, 13-year-old kid, which is when I started being passionate about the climate crisis, how are you going to tell that kid that the world is going to go on fire? That's not going to get them motivated. Yes, some kids will become motivated that way, but you have to present it in a way of hope. Like, there is change. Science is evolving. Our voices do matter. And with that, I think urgency will grow tenfold.
I think a lot of Gen Z actually love fighting for our own voice, but rarely are we willing to fight to hear the voices of others. Like Bailey said, is that we grew up with our phones, right? I think it's the thing keeping us from having intentional and productive conversations with one another, because we have gotten so used to being able to never have to be under the same room or in the same environment as someone that you disagree with, because it's so easy to evade those online spaces and put yourself in an echo chamber in your own bubble filled with people that think exactly like you, look just like you, and act just like you. While I think that is great for finding community, I don't think it's necessarily great for driving change, because we know that the way to change people's minds is by listening to them and engaging with them. And the way that Gen Z in particular has grown up is very much in bubbles. And now we are so scared to go outside of these safety barriers that makes a lot of the discourse that we have fall flat. Because it's like, guys, we are arguing with ourselves. We have to get out of it. And with that comes the need for teaching kids about the algorithm and how they see what they see, and how to engage with people on other sides of different algorithms and understand that they are seeing completely different realities. We have a tendency to think that our reality is the correct one, but no, it's just the one that was crafted to us by code that we do not understand and that we don't really know how to use and harness to the best of our ability, so it benefits us instead of harms us.
I think of all generations, Gen Z just has the audacity, in the best way, the audacity to just try to change things, and a lot of times we found that has worked. And so I think the protests, especially during the college campuses, really just brought that to light.
I love that everyone had such wise and diverse answers, but they were also surprisingly similar, which is kind of fascinating and really just shows that even though Gen Z is such a wide array of people, there's common themes that it seems like we're all feeling right now, with that tentative hopefulness, that careful hopefulness, right? Of like, I think people are listening, we are angry, and we are hopeful. And it's not easy holding those two emotions at the same time.
I always tell young people when I'm working with them in the capacity of storytelling that your story will grow and change just like you. I am nearly a decade into the reproductive rights work. Despite only being 24, I got my start when I was 15 advocating for better sex ed in my school district after experiencing homelessness. And that work propelled me into the work of my 20s, where I have seen the power of social media to put girls like me, who are the most impacted by issues, on the same footing with people like United States senators and congresspeople in the public discourse. And so I've been really excited and interested in my 20s by the question of how we use social media to democratize who gets to tell stories. I have experienced the ups and the downs of the reproductive rights space. And so I really have found a lot of strength in that intergenerational work, knowing that there are people doing this work before me, there will be people doing it after, and that I need only do my best, do my part in this moment, my voice, my story. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, but that when you invest in people, you never lose. In our community members, in our family, our friends, ourselves, we build the kind of skills and resilience that outlast election cycles and create sustainable movements.
And that notion of intersectionality and interconnectedness, I think, is so central to Gen Z, like understanding that we can't have a serious conversation on climate without having a serious conversation around environmental racism, right? Without having a serious conversation around homophobia and misogyny and how all of these is underwritten by supremacist patriarchy, without understanding how so much this is underwritten by socioeconomic inequality, and understanding that all of these movements and discourses are layered on top of each other. And I think sometimes there's a fascination with the media to say, what's the one issue you care most about? Well, no, right? Like, you can't look at any of these in a silo because we won't be effective in our solutioning if we look at them in a silo.
I love to use this word. It's called, I have evidence-based hope. So like evidence-based hope is looking at the continued practice and achievements and solutions that are being unlocked within our communities. And my mentor, Ellen Kelsey, who coined this term, she gave me this really good example is that, and this is how I see Gen Z, is that sometimes when we look at certain landscapes, for example, if I were to look at the ocean near the Bay Area in Northern California, and I look at it and she told me, what's the first thing that you would think about? And I said, I don't know, like dead whales. And she's like, no, like, you know, like what if I told you like ocean researchers that are your age working at the aquarium have been able to find solutions to bring back the humpback whale populations, and they have been increasing for the last few decades. And that to me really showcases like, not that we are blind, but I think that it's easy for us to accept an illusion than it is to accept the truth of things that are going around just because it's not publicized.
I think once you become something of an adult, you start to realize that to be hopeful is to be willfully ignorant, and to be a doomer is almost quite ignorant itself. I think that there's two sides to everything, and I have just as much pessimism as I do optimism, because there's so very much to be worried about, and there's also so much that could be achieved. I'm a very cynical person. President Obama told my friends and I that we were going to make a difference and be part of how we stop gun violence. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing to my face. And here we are almost 7 years after the shooting, and meaningful gun reform hasn't really happened. And that was very, very hurtful to me. And that broke me and my view of the world for so long. Because I said, if my politicians who I looked up to lied to me about this, what good can be done at all? If you are so smart that you can figure out that the world is such a bad place filled with so many bad things, then it's your responsibility to use that brain power to make it better, or else you're just a baby crying. If you're keen enough to notice what's wrong with the world, then you're keen enough to do something about it.
So there you have it. I mean, a couple of different perspectives on the state of Gen Z, which is fascinating. I just think everyone cares about different things, and different things are meaningful, and it doesn't make any of our issues less valid or any of our concerns more valid. It's like, yeah, a whole generation cares about a lot of different things, and it's also comforting to know there's people fighting for everything. So you don't have to take on all of our generation's issues, right? You don't have to be a full-on political activist or a climate activist or a gun violence activist. So it's nice to know that sometimes even just your own experience is enough to help your community, and you don't have to like change the world with one big sweep. Like, it starts small. Before we go back into our little office, I do want to talk with some experts and some researchers and just understand, like, everyone talks about how like the 20s is a defining decade. It's like, you know, people are like, oh, it's the best time of your life or it's the worst time of your life. My question is mostly like, okay, is it actually that important? Is it like you either fuck up here or like you're done for life?
Yeah.
Or I don't know, you know, like what is the importance of it? And two, like, okay, if it really is that important, how can we feel more prepared for it? What resources, like where should we put our time? So
many
much
questions, and I feel like, again, that monumental feeling of, oh my God, I'm 21. I have 9 more years in my 20s. Like, what the fuck am I gonna do now? We just need some guidance. Somebody tell us, are we overthinking this or?
It's fair concerns.
Yeah,
it's
fair concerns.
So I reached out to one of our friends, Dr. Meg Jay, who is a clinical psychologist and best-selling author known for her work on the importance of the 20s in shaping our lives. Her book, The Defining Decade, challenges the notion that your 20s are just the time to figure things out and offers insights on how young adults can take control of their careers, relationships, and personal growth. So when it's literally someone that specializes in 20-somethings, how could we not talk to her? Okay, here's Dr. Meg Jay. So, Meg, we just got done talking with a bunch of 20-year-olds who are all telling us different things about the state of Gen Z and just how we feel about being in our 20s. And the thing about this episode is we keep making this decade to sound so defining and so important. But I'm curious, why is it that it feels like our 20s are so consequential?
Well, there's more happening developmentally in your 20s than at any other time in adulthood. It's terrifying, but true. So we know that in your 20s, your brain is sort of going through its last big growth spurt. Personality is changing. Mental health is changing. Usually takes a dip before then it improves. People are figuring out career, they're figuring out love, they're figuring out friendship. So everything is shifting. So there's sort of more on the move. That also means there's more uncertainty. So it makes it not just a defining time, but a really difficult time too.
I mean, so many Gen Z are chronically online, and it feels like all they're ever doing is comparing themselves.
Also, there's just different societal benchmarks now, I feel, for being in your 20s. I feel like back then you get married, you have kids early in your 20s, and now that's not typically the case. So I'm guess how has now being like in this current generation, what's the typical experiences of being in your 20s?
You know, I really encourage 20-somethings not to feel behind because they're not on the same timeline as someone from 50 years ago, but just to figure out what am I trying to do? What's the timeline that I want? And yeah, to do some sort of data point reassurance around the fact that, you know, average age of career satisfaction is 32. Average age of finding your life partner, it's about 30. Same with having a child. Average age of first home ownership is, I believe, 36. So, you know, in terms of the modern data, the 21st century data, most 20-somethings are on time in terms of they're working toward those things.
I'm also just intrigued by this idea that, you know, you have time. You hear it so much. I feel like every young person gets told that they have so much time ahead of them, but it never really feels like it, because then on another hand, you're constantly getting told your 20s are super important. And you hear this everywhere. This is the time to take risks. This is the time to fail. But this is also the time to really focus in on your career and set yourself up for a successful future. So when you enter your 30s, you're in a good place. And it's like, you should sacrifice some fun time so you could really have fun in your 30s. How do you deal with that? The push and pull between I have time and no, this is a pivotal time in your developmental life.
You know, rather than thinking about it as, am I supposed to have fun now and work hard later, or work hard now and have fun later? It's part of being in your 20s is figuring out, how do I put all those things together in the same decade again and again? Because you're going to want work and love and fun and friendship and family and all those things in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond. So it's not, am I trying to decide work now, play later, or play now, work later? But how do work and fun and risk and success, how do all those things go together at the same time?
It's interesting hearing that, like just saying the example age, like 26, you sort of snap and you realize that, or you have that feeling of, I don't have a lot of time left. And I'm just curious where that stems from necessarily. Like, is it I don't have enough time for career or family relationships, or is it just everything?
I mean, it's everything, but it's really about time perspective. You know, when people are further away, you know, you're this side of the halfway point of 20 to 30, you feel like, oh, you know, that's way, I've got more than half of my 20s left. I'm good. But then the minute you get to that other side of, you know, the halfway point, you realize I have less time now between where I'm standing in 30 than between where I'm standing in 20. And I think suddenly, you know, that sense of like, wow, time is actually running out, you know, on my 20s, not on my life. Life is not over at 30. But, you know, what the urgency is about depends on you. So, I mean, sometimes I have clients who they've, you know, figured out love, but work is really TBD. Or it's the other way around, where they've spent all their time thinking about work, and now they're going, well, shoot, I don't really want to spend the rest of my life alone, so I have to do the other stuff too.
How much attention should we be giving intimate relationships during our 20s? You know, should we? I mean, it's really, there's no hard rule, but I'm curious what you have found when it comes towards the attitude of romantic relationships.
You know, the majority of young adults who find a life partner find it at about 30 plus or minus, 3 years. So I don't just like wander into the grocery store and pick one off the shelf. I mean, I probably am going to get it wrong a couple of times, and I would like to know that person for a minute before I go like, oh, we're 30, let's do it. Once you kind of back that up, you realize that your 20-something relationships are consequential, not necessarily because you're going to marry every single person you date, but because you have sort of limited opportunity to learn and grow from your relationships. And so I encourage 20-somethings to use their 20-something relationships as opportunities for growth and change. Because 30 sounds like a long way off, but when you realize like, wow, I'll probably only have 2 or 3 or 4 significant relationships before I might be trying to find my person. That's not a lot. The average 20-something has 9 jobs by the age of 35. You'll probably have more jobs than you will have real relationships. So the ones that you are having, I encourage people to use them, as opportunities to really figure out, what do you want to need from a relationship, whatever that means to you. 20-somethings are feeling anxious of like, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious, my life isn't going to work out. Sometimes people try to reassure them by saying, oh, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. But that doesn't actually calm an anxious brain, that people feel unhelped by that statement. They feel more helped by saying, well, what are you worried about? Let's talk about it. Well, what are you thinking? And how much time do you have? And what are you doing to work toward those goals? And then people go, oh, okay, I have a strategy. I'm doing something. I'm making progress, which is better than like, it'll be fine.
And that fact that you said too about like, we'd probably have like 9 jobs throughout our 20s is pretty crazy to think about, of just like transition to transition. But how can we begin to build a career and just life really grounded in our experiences and our true passions rather than just like fleeting desires or temporary trends? How can we begin to identify and pursue our long-term goals?
As a matter of fact, most young adults end up in careers or positions that they never heard of when they were in college. So this idea that, you ask college students, what do you want to be? It's a very limiting question because most of them have never heard of the thing that they end up doing. And sometimes it doesn't even exist yet because technologies change and what's salient changes. So I try not to do too much of what do you want to be, who do you want to be, like narrowing that down, because they don't really know how to answer that question, as much as to say, what are you good at? What are the skills that you're looking to hone? Where are the growth opportunities for you? And if you sort of spend your 20s gathering sort of that positive growth and change, building those skills, then your career is yours to be made in your 30s and beyond.
On another note, how do you show your parents that you are growing up? You're no longer 18, fresh out of high school. You are 22, 23. You are almost at your mid-20s. What advice do you have for parents that are trying to hopefully respect that their kid is now an adult and they deserve to be treated as such?
So, if you're a 20-something and you want to be treated like an adult, act like an adult. And parents out there, if you have 20-something kids, you have to let them grow up. Let them show you who they are now and let them be that. As much as we might all want to sort of like keep our kids close and keep them around for all of their lives, that may not be what they want or even what's good for them. So I think that's something for 20-somethings to remember. It's the small things. It's the conversations you had, that led to the new apartment or the new job or the new person to date. It's the job you took for 6 months that, where you met someone who then ended up leading you to the job you took for 5 years. So oftentimes it's these small pivotal moments that make a big difference. And that's really the beauty of being in your 20-somethings, is because that's still very possible every single day.
I feel like it was really reassuring to know I'm not crazy for like planning out my life so far ahead. I think everyone, whenever I tell them that I'm like, okay, so I have to have this by 23, which means I need to do this by 20, and I needed to have this by 22, everyone's like, oh my God, Kyle, you have so much time. Like, why are you stressing about this? But I'm like, no, guys, like really, if you think about it, like if you think about it, you have 3 years for this, 2 years for this, and by the time you do all that, you're already at like 28, so your 20s are done. We really don't have as much time as we think.
I think a lot of young people are looking for autonomy, but with guidance. And so finding those adults and people that you can look to for mentorship is so important when you're experiencing all of these things for the first time and you don't know what to do. So I really do love the advice that she gave.
Guys, we have had so many moments, whether it was while we were recording this podcast or previous shows, where we just started feeling bad, you know? We started feeling pessimistic and nihilistic about everything. And honestly, yeah, falling into that like doomerism mindset of everything sucks. I don't like this. I don't have the energy. There's a few things that helped. One, eating, fueling my body helped a lot, hydrating it. But then also even other little things like getting fresh air and taking a moment to breathe and relax and just calm down for a bit.
Do you think you do a good job of making sure that you like take time to have breaks and stuff throughout the day?
Especially when I'm at home and I'm working, because I like work from home, it's sometimes hard to remind myself to take a break because I'm not talking to anyone. I'm like so dialed in, so focused.
You're too locked in.
So locked in. It feels like it takes so much for me to focus and concentrate that I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go on that walk. I don't want to lose concentration because then I have to refocus and come back. But I noticed that it's better for me to go on that walk because yes, even though I might have to put in the effort to focus and lock in again, I know I'll be able to focus for a longer time than say, oh, I didn't take the walk. I didn't lose focus, but 10 minutes later, I just can't do anything anymore.
Something that I recognize I do that is bad is sometimes I'll give myself a break, like an allotted 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but then I'm on my phone.
And that's not a break.
And it's not a break because then I feel just as shitty as before.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm like, okay, well, that was my scrolling time.
I think for me, the things that help the most is just believing that good habits, as small as they can be, will lead to bigger change. I'm pretty good at forcing myself to do things that are good for me, even though the positive results aren't so clear right away. It's like, yes, take that 10-minute walk. Take the 10-minute walk over and over and over again every single day because I know it's good for me. Even though I feel like I don't feel suddenly happy after this walk. I could be feeling depressed, doom scrolling in bed, but right, like we can't kid ourselves either that, oh yeah, just because I took this walk, I'm happy now. It's the fact that I learn to build self-trust the more I do these things of, okay, I can trust myself to take care of myself. And ultimately having that self-trust in yourself is crucial, not only for tackling your everyday responsibilities, but also just trusting that you'll get through future conflict and through future challenges. You just gotta have the hope and the courage and the trust that you'll be okay. And usually you are. You know, you go through something like heartbreak or grief or nihilism, and then you overcome it, you come out on the other side, and if you take some time to reflect, you realize, like, I was so scared to go through this, but I feel so much better now that I have, knowing that nothing bad happened.
And I think those feelings are a lot more intense and overwhelming when you feel isolated in those feelings, you know, and you're not talking to anybody about it. Because that's what happens to me is I'll be so in my head about feeling like really depressed or feeling really anxious. And then when I talk to somebody about it, all of a sudden it doesn't seem as scary or big as I once thought. And also the thing about routines too, obviously, yes, beneficial. Yes, it can be hard to stay in a routine when you don't have that energy. You have to be very self-disciplined to be in a routine, which I admire in you a lot. But sometimes for me, being realistic, sometimes I don't have the energy to go on that walk. And I'll just stay in bed, which I know makes me feel like a piece of shit. But sometimes I need to feel like a piece of shit to feel better.
And I think for me too, I think it's important to have the hope that it's not. And every generation has challenges. You know, our parents faced really big dilemmas, and I'm sure to them it felt like the world was ending as well, but they were able to overcome it. And there were so many activists and community leaders and just people that had the hope that it can get better. And honestly, that's how movements start and that's how change happens. But on a more individual level, it begins with us feeling ready and hopeful and not diving into that mindset of, oh my God, I'm such a doomer, I'm so sad, it's all so scary, but instead having some level of hope. Maybe it's as simple as by just giving them the resources to have a stable career, have life skills, have mental health resources, because when you feel good about helping others and making change. And so I think that's what we're trying to do. I think that's the goal of GrownKid.
And it's a process too. Of course, with each episode, we're learning more about what it means to be an adult and how to feel more prepared. But also, adulting is not linear.
No, there are lows.
Linear.
There are lows.
Lots of lows, but also lots of highs. There's so many things to look forward to, especially when you're growing older. You get to learn more about yourself. You get
Life can be fun. Life can
so
be good.
fun.
There's so much to look
Yes.
forward to.
Wow.
Wow, look at us go.
Look at us go, exactly. And so I think a lot of it is just learning to be patient with yourself too. It's okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay to have bad days. A bad day isn't a bad life. You'll get over it and it's okay.
There's so much abundance, and sometimes it really just takes a reminder, because it's hard to feel good when you're just thinking about all the shitty things that have ever happened. So I hope you're all feeling maybe a little bit better, and maybe not. Either one is okay. Thank you all so much for joining us on this first episode of GrownKid. If you're listening to this, I hope you stick around, because throughout the next 12 episodes, we're just going to be talking about so many issues that can feel overwhelming, and hopefully help you get your shit together as we talk with experts and researchers and other young adults that are dealing with these same issues as us.
We have so much to go through and unpack, so new episodes will be coming out every Thursday, so make sure to follow the show so that you get notified when we post, so that you can join in on this wonderful, amazing conversation.
And we also have Q&As and polls, if you're listening on Spotify, that you can participate in. So please check those out every episode, because we want to hear from you.
Yes, and follow us on socials at GrownKid everywhere, so that you can get to know more about Kyle and I, and also see some BTS and just hang out with us.
Yeah, send us a message. We want to hear, we want to respond to you. So if you have any thoughts, just always feel free to DM us. We're only a DM away. You can listen to every episode of GrownKid wherever you get your podcast from. With that being said, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.